Does anyone remember 2008? Does anyone remember what happened in 2008? The big old financial crisis? Does anyone understand how that happened? Does anyone remember how that happened? Yes? No? Maybe? This is creating what is known as a bubble. And the bubble is expanding. And it's expanding rapidly. And I don't know if you've all seen the movie The Big Short. That hot tub scene or bathtub scene that you just watched was from that film. And when you're watching that movie, it's kind of a after the fact thing. And, the people in that movie, the protagonists, they were the few people that were able to see this coming before it happened, before the 2008 financial crisis. And they were actually able to make a whole bunch of money on it. They're not heroes. They're not good guys. They're basically just people who were smart enough to realize, oh wow, this is happening and it's going to result in this. And when this happens, it's going to create a massive financial crisis. There's profit to be had here. It's kind of the whole thing. You know this guy. He's relatively famous right now. The president of the US of A, so you may know him as that. Joe Biden had a campaign promise. Not that he was going to forgive the full $50,000 worth of student debt, but he did say that he was going to forgive a large amount, I believe to the tune of $10,000 per American who needed it. That got shortened to a bit, which got shortened to barely anything. He has forgave some student debt, specifically related to, I believe, students with disabilities. I think he's forgiven still under 1% of all student debt. And the big thing that I've been asking myself is why? Because A, he has the power to do it. He doesn't have to worry about that finicky old Senate. He can do it through executive action. So it seems strange for something that he has promised that will directly benefit Americans, that will directly benefit black Americans disproportionately more than it'll benefit other Americans. White Americans, for example, typically do not have to take out large student loans as often as black Americans do. So this is something that, would make a lot of Americans happy. Would obviously give them a whole bunch of financial freedom, would pump a lot of money back into the economy. Because, yeah, if you suddenly had a $40,000 debt disappear like that, you best believe some people will be putting a little bit more money into shopping, buying, eating at a local restaurant, things they may be pinching pennies on because they are worried about their debt. We're coming right up to an election, and this seems like, a decent enough thing to do, or at least try and attempt to do right before election time. So the big question kept coming up, but why? Why won't you do it? Is it just because he can't? Because Chuck Schumer says he can, but then Nancy Pelosi was like, no, he can't anymore. And then Rolling Stone was like, but he can. And then Political was like, well, he can't. And then, there's just a lot of things going on. Apparently, there may be some more to the story than meets the eye, Transformers style. As the presidential primaries rumble on, the candidates, especially Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, have debated college affordability, this is a long time ago, by the way, and Wall Street greed. Unfortunately, no one is confronting the links between the two. More than 40 million Americans have student debt, totaling at least $1.2 trillion. On average, borrowers out of school owe $36,000 with a monthly payment of about $680. $680 just going towards your debt payments. A lot of that goes towards the interest, not just towards paying the debt off itself. Roughly 11% of borrowers are in default. Overall, indebtedness discourages people from starting degrees, families, businesses, dragging everyone down, or almost everyone. One person's debt is another person's asset. What some owe, others own. And student debtors don't just cut checks on lenders. Our money flows to third parties, including investors. Does anyone remember 2008? Does anyone remember what happened in 2008? The big old financial crisis? Does anyone understand how that happened? Does anyone remember how that happened? Yes? No? Maybe? I think maybe the best way to explain this is with the hot tub scene. Or the bath scene? Yeah, the bath scene. There we go.
Basically, Louis Ranieri's mortgage bonds were amazingly profitable for the big banks. They made billions and billions on their 2% fee they got for selling each of these bonds. But then they started running out of mortgages to put in them. After all, there are only so many homes and so many people with good enough jobs to buy them, right? So the banks started filling these bonds with riskier and riskier mortgages. Thank you, Banjo. That way, they can keep that profit machine churning, right? By the way, these risky mortgages are called subprime. So whenever you hear subprime, think shit. Our friend Michael Burry found out that these mortgage bonds that were supposedly 65% AAA were actually just mostly full of shit. So now he's going to short the bonds, which means to bet against. Got it? Good. Now fuck off.
To those who just came in directly and only because of the thirst, stay. Just 2 more seconds, okay? Because the thirst will turn into an educational process. Basically, the 2008 financial crisis that occurred, more and more risky, let's just say, loans started to be collaborated. You start blending together what are known as like C-tier loans into new classifications and then reselling them to investors. And this process continues to, let's just say, concentrate upon itself, all done under the auspices of, hey, we're just giving people, on one end, we're giving people a whole bunch of very, very risky loans that they probably won't be able to pay off, but at the same time, they're like, hey, I'm living in this incredible house I didn't even think about that I'd ever have access to. And then you've got the other side of all these people who are actually betting on whether or not these mortgages are going to default, which is a weird thing. I don't think it should be legal. I don't know why this is a process that's allowed to happen. But anyways, the whole thing continues to compound upon itself. It sounds very boring injury, and I know, and everyone's like, but don't worry, it can never happen again because we fixed that problem and we're in a better place now. It seems now they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it for student loans instead of doing it on subprime housing mortgages. As the student debt crisis continues to mount, major financial institutions are making record profits from student loan assets-backed securities. Student loan debt burdens 44 million people in the United States. However, CEOs for student loan companies or investors on Wall Street, student debt is a lucrative commodity to be bought and sold for profit. Corporations such as Navient, Nelnet, Fiat service outstanding student debt on the behalf of the Department of Education. These companies also issue student loan asset-backed securities, also known as SLABs. In collaboration with major financial institutions like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and these firms and their creditors, debt isn't just an asset, it's their bottom line. Investors holding slabs are entitled to coupon payments at regular intervals until the security reaches final maturity, or they can trade the assets in a speculative secondary market. There is even a forum where slab investors can anonymously discuss their assets and transactions free from unwanted public scrutiny. Yet, the financialization of student debt is almost never reported on in the media. There is little public awareness when the student borrowed signs their master promissory notes. Oh, okay, I guess it's part of the contract, affirming they will repay their loans and reasonable collection costs. Their debt may be scrutinized and sold to investors. The history of slabs. Slabs resulted from a specific federal policy decision. On November 27, 1992, the Securities and Exchange Commission adopted Rule 3A7 of the Investment Company Act of 1940, which allows companies who invest asset-backed securities to be exempt from legal definitions of an investment company. This exemption permits companies to avoid asset registration fees and regulatory oversight, making it profitable for a student loan company, amongst others, to issue securities, which effectively created the market of slabs. In total, $600 billion worth of slabs have been issued, with $170 billion worth of still outstanding. Jesus. There are 2 types of slabs, those backed by loans made by private lenders, and those backed by loans made through federally family education loan programs. The majority of all student debt today is the $1.1 trillion, that's more now, loaned by the federal government through the direct lending program. And while these loans cannot be securitized directly, they can be if borrowers consolidate or refinance their loans through a private lender. Private student loan debt accounts for roughly $120 billion of the $1.6 trillion outstanding in debt. Companies such as SoFi refinance student loans and have issued $18 billion in slabs since their founding in 2011. These loans are highly favorable to lenders, as borrowers who default on the private loans face greater consequences than those who default on federal loans. FFEL loans are made by private lenders and are guaranteed by the federal government if borrowers default, which incentivizes riskier lending. Although Congress ended the program in 2010, there's still roughly $280 billion in FFEL loans outstanding, and the largest firms such as Navient and Nelnet retain their FFEL loans in their portfolios and have continued to issue backed slabs. So this is creating what is known as a bubble, and the bubble is expanding, and it's expanding rapidly. And I don't know if you've all seen the movie The Big Short. That hot tub scene or bathtub scene that you just watched was from that film. And when you're watching that movie, it's kind of a after the fact thing. And, the people in that movie, the protagonists, they were the few people that were able to see this coming before it happened, before the 2008 financial crisis. And they were actually able to make a whole bunch of money on it. They're not heroes. They're not good guys. They're basically just people who were smart enough to realize, oh wow, this is happening and it's going to result in this, and when this happens, it's going to create a massive financial crisis. There's profit to be had here. Is kind of the whole thing. If the whole thing is occurring a secondary time, at a moment in history, by the way, when everything is very razor thin in terms of there's a huge amount of inflation right now. Gas prices are soaring. People are in a position where they do not have the financial means to meet large, let's just say, crises. If there was a complete and massive financial collapse, it could result in a lot of very bad things happening simultaneously, almost like a domino effect, if you will. It's a very wobbly time. And the fact that this is not being talked about, let alone, I'm pretty in the know with leftist shit. Okay, I didn't even know this was happening until this morning when Jeff Waldorf was like, "Hey, by the way, have you gone down the rabbit hole of the fact that student loan debt is actually creating a financial bubble in a very similar fashion to the way the housing debt crisis did, and no one's talking about it?" And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm being canceled on Twitter right now. That's the only thing that I really see. My notifications they're just wild. There's a lot of people extremely mad at me, and we'll get into that separately. But I'm just saying this is absolutely frightening, to say the least, and it's something that I would like to see more people talk about, including I don't know, even lefty orgs like Democracy Now! Here's your shout out. Or hey, the clown shoes left. Jimmy Dore, this has your fingerprints all over it. It's a lot of things you hate. You despise the Democrats, so you can directly blame Joe Biden for not taking this seriously and not actually forgiving the student debt. You hate crony capitalists, apparently. I guess some of them you like, but some you don't. But either way, this seems like something like, I haven't even heard Richard Wolff going off about this on a regular basis, or maybe he has and I missed that one. Over the past few decades, student loan companies in Wall Street have amassed record profits. Meanwhile, 1.6 trillion in student debt is crushing generations of Americans by delaying home ownership, causing generational wealth to decrease, contributing to widespread depression and even suicide. Since the ironically named Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act of 2005, student debt is virtually impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. The highest level of slabs incidents occurred between 2005 and 2007, while falling sharply during the 2008 financial crisis. Could a future recession led to similar breakdowns in the slabs market? Parallels to the reckless and illegal actions of Wall Street with mortgage-backed securities that led to the global financial crisis a decade ago may trigger similar alarm bells. Nonetheless, there are important differences between slabs and MBS. Ooh, nice. Sweet relief. Here we go. First and foremost, student loan debts cannot be collateralized. That's good, because that was one of the reasons why things got so out of control. With MBS, the loans were collateralized by the house or property being purchased, but the equity in the student loans is the borrower's future expected earnings, which are difficult to quantify. Secondary, the overall market for slabs is a fraction of the size of MBS market before the financial crisis. Okay, good. I'm decompressing. I feel it happening in real time. Finally, because the federal guarantees for the FFEL loans in 2008 or 2005 bankruptcy laws, it is uncommon for student loan companies will lose the value of their underlying investment, even when the trends are showing that students are increasingly unable to pay their loans. While slabs may not pose the same level of systemic threat to global financial systems that MBS pose, there are legitimate concerns that this market poses serious systematic risks. I decompressed like 2 seconds ago. I'm recompressing. I feel it happening. I'm recompressing in real time. Navient is the largest student loan servicing company and the largest issuer of slabs. Its filings in the SEC. Navient acknowledges the following risk factors. An economic downturn may cause the market for auction rate notes to cease to exist. Holders of auction rate securities may be unable to sell those securities and may experience a potentially significant loss of market value. Due to the securitization food chain, if Navient and other slab issuers or holders experience a significant loss of revenue, they could default on their obligations, triggering negative consequences for Wall Street firms that market these securities on investors and supply credit to greater public. I don't know, everybody. I'm starting to feel hungry. I'm starting to get a slight bit peckish. Yes, but not for human, as some of you may be assuming I'm going. That's not the direction I was going in. But for justice. Justice, that's right. I'm not looking to cannibalize the rich. I'm looking to imprison them. That would be my policy. Especially the corrupt few who seem to make decisions for the many and fuck over quite a bit of people, which is the thing. Hungry for just ass. Yes. Okay, fine. But now we've conflated the two. People are going to get confused. They're going to be like, wait, Lance wants to eat ass, but also have just something? I don't know. Both. As the rational discontent of younger generation continues to grow, catalyzed by lower quality of life of older generations, accelerating climate crisis, insurmountable student debt, activists may choose to utilize the power of economic withdrawal. Rather than endure Sisyphean burden of unpayable debt, young people could exploit the vulnerabilities of slab via debt strikes or boycotts. How do we do that? Advocates during the Occupy Wall Street movement, but nothing came from that. The Occupy Wall Street movement was just like an experiment that kind of just flittered out. 15 frustrated students launched the country's first student debt strike. This could be a thing. I would be on board. I would help. I no longer have student loan debt, but I would be on board to to fight for this. I can fight for this. I do have other forms of debt. My old boss got me into quite a bit of trouble with his. I can't say legally because things, but let's just say the exploitation of people who work in the film industry is very real, and the crunch and overtime pay, as well as manipulation and deceptive practices, are also very real. ... But debt strikes. Yeah, I'm on board with debt strikes for sure. I'm not even doing this as in a like, I don't think there should be such a thing as debt at all, and I think that every single person who has any amount owing to any other individual, it should all just evaporate, and we should live in this fantasy land where we're all holding hands and dancing and smiling or something. I just think from a standpoint of, if it's within our power to do something that is not going to completely collapse other institutions that'll bring a bunch of people down, like in this case, if it's like, well, if the government was to forgive all student debt, all $1.2 trillion, you have to understand that could result in a cataclysmic shift that would result in loss of tens of thousands of jobs, which will result in famine, starvation, blah, 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 whatever the connective tissue is in this case. I would still be of the mind that, hey, what are we capable of doing that will not do undue burden onto a vast amount of people who may not foresee it coming. What is the realistic? Because I don't know the answer to this. This is more of a maybe we need means testing, but this is more of a putting it out there kind of thing. What is the realistic thing that can be done here that'll both help the economy? Because if a whole bunch of Americans no longer have massive debts, yes, it does help the economy. That's more money that they can put towards other things such as shopping and buying and consuming and purchasing. So it is almost certainly a good thing for them to not be saddled with so much debt that it doesn't allow them to have good lives, like a debt jubilee. It's a fun word. Students need not to pay a cent of their debt. It's not like they can unteach you. They can't unteach us. That is true. All education should be free, by the way. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to conduct many a human sacrifices in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble yet incompetent jesters, trying in vain to bring some levity into your life. To our Lord Trevor R., we give you thanks for this meager plot of land for us to toil away our pathetic existence. To our brave knights, Carl Wauer, Tony, D.M. Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruben Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Nate, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Jenna Tal, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We salute our mighty heroes off to conquest some bread in some far-off land.